Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon to the Relentless Growth podcast with myself, Chase, and my good friend here, Jack. Jack, how you doing today?
Doing great. It's a beautiful day out, so I'm excited to jump into it.
There you go. There you go. Well, before we get started, everybody, hey, if you get something out of this podcast, please like and share it. Leave a review on one of the platforms. We're just getting started at this, and it should help us grow along the way. Other than that, we're gonna jump into it. We decided that we were gonna do a real estate kind of market update and just kind of a little discussion on how everything's going. I don't know about you, Jack, but the last year in real estate and construction has been a little bit weird. So good, bad, and indifferent. It's just been different. So I was thinking we could start with kind of the regional areas. So I'm in Central Arkansas, you're in Tennessee, and so maybe you just want to get us started with how are things going where you're at in Tennessee.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So for the listeners out there, we're about 30 minutes south of Nashville. We're in a sub-market of Nashville, and so we're primarily a bedroom community. That's changing a little bit, but we've seen a shift here lately. So our primary focus right now is on multifamily and rentals, and so I'll be able to speak most accurately to the rental market. And so what we've seen is kind of spring is always leasing season, and you always see a pickup, but we've seen a pretty significant one in the last 4 to 6 weeks. And we've also seen rents start to trend back in the right direction, at least the right direction for us, upward a little bit. We've seen downward rent pressure for the past year and a half or 2 years. And so we're seeing that start to tick back up, and we've seen really, really strong demand. And so I think in terms of the multifamily market, it seems like that we've bottomed out and we're starting to turn the corner. And we still keep an eye on the single family market as well. And at least for us, it's still kind of hit or miss in our market. It hasn't turned yet. You know, some stuff sells, some stuff sits at all price points. It seems like, and so I don't think there's quite that same definitive movement happening in the single family. We haven't seen a definitive rate change, and so maybe that'll come, but we're not seeing that in our market yet.
Yeah. So we're in Central Arkansas. We're in Little Rock for everybody listening, and very similar. So we've seen the rent prices here, and again, we do small multifamily and single family rentals, but it's very similar kind of tenant class, I guess. But we'd seen quite a bit of rent growth, especially through COVID and all that craziness over the last couple of years. Last year was the first year, I would say in the last 7 years, that we paused rental increases. So we proactively paused any of our increases especially on renewals, just to try to retain tenants as much as possible. And there's still a strong rental demand here, and there still is today. It's just we had seen there. I think there was a little bit more stress in the market. People were being a little bit more picky and choosy, and so just to try to retain tenants, we paused. Although we'd still seen a little bit of increases on the stuff that we're putting onto the market. And then I would say today, like the market's pretty strong. It's harder than it was a couple of years ago. As far as we're seeing on lease ups, we're seeing stuff sit maybe a little bit longer than it was a couple of years ago, but it's renting steady. But there's still strong demand here, and there's especially a strong demand here for nice rental properties. I know the market you're in, Jack's like mainly newer. It's a newer community. We have a lot of older product here in Little Rock, so it's like a lot of times we're either have a new house or a newly remodeled house or apartment we're competing against like really old stuff, and so there's just not a lot of new units maybe coming on market. So we're still seeing good demand on those. Same thing with the housing sales. Like I was just having this conversation with somebody earlier today. It's like you get swings in the sales market. We're definitely swung to the slow side by quite a bit. And I think it's a matter of time before it picks back up, but I don't think it's necessarily because there's not buyers. Like I think there's a lot of people here that would love to buy houses. I think there's a ton of young people here that would have loved to buy houses a couple of years ago. But it was like a few years ago, they were getting beat out by real estate investors. Any like reasonably priced starter home, we were seeing multiple offers from real estate investors. And then the rates went up. So like that house they were looking at, they could no longer afford the payments on because of that jump in the rates. And so I think there's a lot of like pin up demand sitting on the sideline, but people still aren't super comfortable to jump in and start buying. Same thing we're seeing some stuff sell. We just sold some investment properties, but we're seeing some of the spec homes are just sitting at all price points, and so it's just hard to say. I know. And I don't know if you want to touch on nationwide or just kind of where we're at, but it seems like it's kind of similar nationwide. It seems like office is still struggling kind of nationwide, but regionally, like where we're at, we were looking about a year ago for an office space, and we couldn't find a nice office to save our lives. And so here locally, it's like there's a big demand, even though I know nationwide office is still struggling.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the same thing. I think when you hit big cities, office is struggling. But our city of Spring Hill, we're about 65,000 people, and there's zero vacancy, and people are always looking. So I think in the sub markets, the tertiary markets, I think it seems like there's pretty strong demand. But in those urban cores is where we're seeing a lot of, I don't know if it's distress yet, but a lot of vacancy in the office market. And an interesting stat, a friend of mine sent me a BlackRock report that they had published. I don't know if they published it, but and I think currently the discrepancy between rent and a mortgage payment is at an all-time high. And so for a comparable property, I think the difference was about $1,800 a month. And so when you look at that and you talk about people who want to buy, but they can't, because that's a tremendous gap for somebody to make up between rent and a mortgage payment. And so unless something changes dramatically, I think we're going to continue to see that pent-up demand and continue to see strong rental demand because, obviously wages haven't increased at the rate the property has. And it's a big jump.
Yeah. Yeah. The same conversation I was having earlier, I don't know. I mean, I think for a long time, it was like the American dream was to buy a house. And I think especially with a lot of younger people, it's not even that a lot of them could afford to buy right now. Maybe it was too competitive before, and the rates are higher now, so it kind of slowed them down a little bit. But I still think there's a lot of people out there that could afford to buy. They just don't want to. So they're not sure. Like, and we see it a lot, like in Little Rock. Like they're not sure if they want to stay in Little Rock, so they just want to rent for a couple of years and see how it goes. So it's like a combination of it. It's gotten more expensive for people, but then it's also like. With jobs and everything that can be done remotely, or so easy to find jobs elsewhere now. It's like they're not sure if they're going to commit to the place. So I think that's slowing it down a little bit as well. I'm not going to try to quote the statistic because I can't remember exactly, but it was like the first time home buyers is at like an all-time low right now. So out of all the homes that have sold in, say, the last year, the amount of those homes that was a first-time home buyer is the lowest it's been in a super long time. And again, I think it's a little bit of a combination of being priced out of the market, but also just not wanting to buy. We've had a lot of our houses, because a lot of our rentals are single family homes and nicer single family homes. And we kind of always tell people, hey, if you ever decide you love the house and you want to stay and you want to buy it, just let us know. Like we're not trying to keep everything that we rent. We'd be more than happy to sell them. And I've never had anybody take me up on it. And I had a young guy one time who was like in the military making a ton of money, and he was basically renting the house and house hacking. He was like renting the rooms to all his military buddies, and they were great tenants. And I'm like, dude, you'd be living for free and making money every month if you just bought the house. And I'll sell it to you. Like, I'm not trying to be greedy with it. Like, you can buy it, do the same exact thing you're doing. You'll literally live for free. Plus, you'll be making money because he was charging a bunch of money to these guys for these rooms, and they get the house in the house. And he was just like, no, man, I don't want to deal with it because I'm probably going to move in a couple of years. I don't want to deal with it later. And so it's just interesting.
Yeah, I think you've seen a value shift from, people are putting a pretty high value on convenience and not having to deal with maintenance and less of a value on ownership. And I think we're seeing that trend. And, at an apartment complex or a rental, sometimes you get access to amenities, things that you would never have in a single family house. And so it's that whole lifestyle shift that we're seeing with the younger generation. And people are really attracted to it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And again, neither you or I do anything in, per se in other, I guess, sectors real estate. One thing that I guess when I was looking some information up, the industrial seems to be like kind of a hot one recently nationwide. It seems like industrial is doing really well, and there still continues to be a pretty solid demand for it. I just read something that I think the city of Little Rock was actively negotiating with Amazon again for another big facility here. I think we already have 2 or 3 of them in central Arkansas, and it's like they're looking at bringing in another huge warehouse facility. And so it's interesting that some of those seem to be still rocking and rolling a lot. I also had a conversation with a commercial developer recently that they've been struggling to. They used to grow their say fast food type restaurant businesses through commercial development, but they've really had to slow down because the high interest rates. This has really compressed their ability to grow their investment. I guess their business through their real estate investments because everything's gotten more expensive lately. I think that might be a good transition, but everybody's been wanting to talk about tariffs and what that's going to do to everything. Um, I don't know about you, but we've already had some of our material suppliers send out like proactive emails saying that they're probably going to have to increase their prices because of tariffs, and but couldn't really tell us how much or when or if. Just it's going to get more expensive. We don't know when or how much, but kind of be ready for it. The first one we saw it with was we're building some metal, some steel storage buildings, and the company said that the steel is likely to be more expensive on the next building that we're getting ready to order. And kind of like, hey, we should probably get this fabricated quick if you want to lock in your pricing. Have you guys started to see increases in your material costs because of the tariffs?
Yeah, we've seen things here and there. So same thing on steel. That's the only real one that we've realized at this point. Rebar for footers, that sort of thing. And thankfully, our supplier usually gives us a little bit of a heads up. Hey, in 2 weeks we think we're going to jump, and so our method is usually we'll pre-buy for a couple months. Um, you can't beat every price increase by pre-buying, but we'll buy a little extra for a couple months in case, especially with the tariffs. If it's at 20% today, and in the next couple months they're going to have a negotiation, and that may drop down. So that's been kind of our method to try and circumvent them as best as possible. And then the other ones we've seen is we bring in containers of flooring direct from, I believe it comes from Vietnam, and so we've seen those costs tick up. And obviously, you can't go back in time. But what we did when we heard the tariffs were on the table was we went ahead and ordered a couple extra containers to try and beat that. So we've got a couple extra that were en route before those tariffs went into place, and then we're holding off on ordering our next batch to see what kind of settles out on that end. But I think from our perspective, at least, and I know you went through COVID in new construction and the misery of that, and what we realized, is if I can't touch it and feel it, it doesn't exist. If I can't put my eyes on it, I don't care who tells me it's there. I don't care who tells me they can get it to me tomorrow. I don't believe it. And so I think with some of these key factories, key suppliers, I think if we can get them a little closer to us, I think it's going to be better for us in the long term. At least that's the way we're looking at it. And if we have to pay a little more in the short term, I think it's something that we're absolutely willing to do. But I think long term, we've got to be able to control our own destiny on supplies, and it's a risk that we're putting ourselves at that we definitely realized through COVID.
Yeah, I think with COVID for us, it was the supply chain issues, and it would always be like the little knick-knack random thing that you wouldn't think of that all of a sudden you couldn't find it anywhere, and it was like holding up the whole project over something silly. And so I think with some of the tariff stuff, that would almost be like more of a concern of mine that they're going to run out of, like all of a sudden you can't buy doorknobs anymore because they're coming from somewhere and everybody's out of them. And so it's just, we haven't seen it yet. We haven't run into anything that we haven't been able to get yet or pivot to something else. And I haven't seen any major jumps. I know there's been some talks or concern about lumber increases, I guess, with the tariffs in Canada, but since those have been paused, like we haven't, hasn't been noticeable for us at least. Uh, and so I guess short term, it's probably not that big of a deal, but just something to keep an eye on, especially if it starts. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like everything's gotten so much more expensive in the last couple of years. It's like I don't know how much higher it can go and still have some of these projects really like make sense. So,
No, we're in the same boat. And the other thing that we've been trying to do, which hopefully will help, we'll see, is just try and cut out legs in the supply chain. Try and get higher up the food chain in terms of a bigger distributor, somebody more in a better position to where there's less chances of that material getting siphoned off between us and the manufacturer. And so, in cases when there is a demand, we want them to send it to us before they send it to anybody else. And so I think that's a strategy as well. Just the more hands it touches, the longer it's going to take, the more chances something's going to go wrong. And so the higher up the food chain you can get, the better you can control your own destiny on that front.
yeah. One, I guess, positive through all this, I would say the last year, even not just the tariffs and all this stuff, but I would say seeing everything being slower over the last year has freed up. There's been a lot of talk of like labor shortages, especially in construction and problems with labor. And I don't know about you, but like we've actually seen it's been a little bit easier to find skilled labor and skilled subcontractors. I feel like maybe especially over the last 6 months. I think where we're at, a lot of the builders have slowed down quite a bit. So we've had the ability to find more good subcontractors that have the need for work. Some of it's like we don't do nearly the volume you guys are doing, but we're doing more volume now than we were before. So some of it's the volume, but some of it's just we've got some contractors that just aren't really building for other people right now. So I think that as things slow down, at least it's made it easier to get labor for us. I mean, have you noticed the same thing? Or are you guys still struggling to get skilled labor?
No, 100%. Yeah. I mean, through COVID, when construction was going through the roof and people were tough to find, you would hire anybody who'd show up for an interview. Our bar was forced to be low because we had to produce our product. And so, yeah, through the last probably 18 months, we've been able to get a lot more picky. We've been able to attract some really good talent. We've been able to hire away some people from other good contractors as well. Primarily, we have a general policy that we don't hire from any of our subcontractors or anything like that. But we've hired some good people from national builders who are ready for a change and want a little more of a relaxed environment. And so, yeah, the last 18 months have been very positive for hiring for us. We probably hired 15 people in the last 18 months, and I would say most of them are still with us.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. How about financing? I know you guys again. It's a little bit different for you because you guys are doing bigger projects. So the type of financing you guys are going after is probably a little bit different than what we're doing. But have you seen any changes in like the not just the ability to get financing, but and I guess I'll say for myself, we're still able to get financing, but I feel like it's been ebbing and flowing with how difficult it is. So it's not that we aren't able to get it, but it's like there's big swings in the economy one way or another, or whatever's going on this week. It's like sometimes the banks are getting tougher to deal with, and then we'll go a couple of weeks down the road, and everything will loosen back up a little bit. What are you guys seeing on some of the projects and the financing you guys are looking at?
Yeah, I think largely, I think we're through the worst of it, at least on our end. But 6 months, 12 months, 18 months ago, I think we primarily finance our projects on the front end through local and regional banks. And so, they were probably, whether they actually were, or whether the government told them they were overexposed on construction loans. And so they were under a lot of pressure to reduce their exposure. And so we definitely felt the pressure a little bit on that. And you've seen, I would say the biggest thing we've seen is a little bit less flexibility out of banks where, the number they give is the number they give. And there's not there's not a lot of negotiation room or a lot of flexibility there because they're trying to hit overall caps and they're lending, especially on the construction side. And so, yeah, it hasn't prevented us from doing any projects, but it's made it more challenging of an equation. And there's definitely more of a cap on banks' ability to lend right now, especially in the construction side.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know it's a little bit different because you guys are kind of in-house and you're not working with outside customers or outside investors or anything like that. One thing, I mean, obviously, like I noticed, is the rates went up. The outside, I'd say like newer or small real estate investors that were actively buying deals, like in our market, slowed way down. When money was cheap, it was like everybody was wanting to get into real estate investing and buy rental properties and stuff like that. And that's slowed down substantially. And so it's like we're still seeing a little bit of movement in the market when it comes to real estate investors, like buying and selling properties. It's odd though, because there's not a lot of them buying, but there's also not a lot of strain. Like there's not a lot of people that are selling stuff right now either. And it does seem like, at least the ones that I've come across here in Central Arkansas, it's usually like 1031 exchange type deals where it's like maybe normally they wouldn't want to buy something right now because the rates are so high, but they're selling something somewhere else and they want to 1031 their money, so they're not taking a big tax hit on it. So they're looking at some of these markets that are a little more advantageous just to own rental properties instead of where they were at. It's definitely
no, and I think just real quick to jump in on that, I think you're right on the 1031. The other thing we've seen is, especially money out of California, wanting to get out of the coast, and the timing of it is less important to them than they want to get it into an advantageous market, whether it be Arkansas, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida. And so they're willing to move their money, even if it's not the perfect time, to get into a better market long term. And so we've seen a big shift of capital from the West Coast into whatever you want to call it, the Sun Belt region as well. And so there's pretty strong demand coming from the West Coast, which I think is helping things.
I think it'll continue. I think it'll continue to. What about and I know this is a hot topic, and you can't really guess on this stuff too much, but what do you think about the interest rates? Do you think they're going to start to come down, or you think they're here to stay, or do you think they're going to go back up? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's whatever you say is going to be wrong. I would expect that they'll make rate cuts. I would expect my thesis, if I had one, which will be wrong, is into this year, beginning of next year, that we'll get down to the fives. And I think if we touch 5, then the faucet turns on and it stays on. And so that's maybe a hopeful prediction, but that's my prediction. Just because we're starting the economy is showing the signs they want to see to lower rates. And so as long as those signs continue, I'm hopeful that into this year, beginning of next, we'll start to see, we're never, at least I don't think we're ever really going to see 2%, 3% rates again. But I think if we can get back into 5, I think it's open season. And so that's what I'm hoping for, at least.
Be awesome. I'd be really excited if they did. Probably doing a lot of refinancing. I do think they're going to come down a little bit. My concern is that we're seeing stress in the market for sure, but we're still kind of seeing inflation. And so my concern is that like there's going to be a weird stalemate there where it's like they can't really drop the rates because of the inflation type thing. And so I hope that they start coming down a little bit towards the end of the year and into next year. And if they came down into the 5s, I agree. Especially like with those first time home buyers I was talking about, that people have just been sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens. Not even including the just real estate investors, people that are doing bigger deals, but even those smaller one-off things. I think it's really going to spur buying in the economy and the housing market and everything else. It's just one of those things right now where it's like everything we're doing, it's like we're doing it as if they're going to stay the same for a really long time. And so even if it's not working well, we're going to do it if it's going to work for now. And if the rates come down later, great. If they don't, I think we just keep chugging along until they do eventually, hopefully. I kind of agree. I feel like it's going to have to get really bad for it to get down as low as they were. I just don't know that we'll ever see that again, or that we'll see that again anytime soon. But just even a little bit would make a substantial difference. I know it would for me personally, least, but I'm sure it would for a lot of
Absolutely.
people, like home buyers and stuff right now.
No, 100%.
One thing that I find is interesting, and again, I don't know if you're seeing this at all, or even just with friends and stuff like that, but is and I don't know about you, but I have $0 invested in the stock market. So it's like, doesn't personally affect me at all, but it's something like I pay attention to a little bit. And the reason I pay attention to it, and I've got friends like this where they have like super stable income and super, high net worth, W-2, take a physician or something. Like their job is not going anywhere. They make a ton of money. They're going to continue to make a ton of money, whether the stock market tanks or whether it does really well. But they've got a bunch of money in the stock market. And like when the stock market tanks on paper, they lose a bunch of money. And then like it really like slows down their personal spending habits. So it's like I lost $150,000 in the stock market last month. And so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go on that vacation. Like it shouldn't affect their spending in any way because it doesn't affect their income in any way. But it's just it's like a mental thing when that stock market's making these big swings. I feel like it affects a lot of people's just, what they're buying and what they're doing and kind of I think it's gonna start to slow down the economy a little bit just with these big swings in the stock.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. And I think when you look at the average person in the US, they're not investing in real estate. And so if they are investing, it's probably in the stock market. And so I think more than anything, it's just a fear factor of when you see a big drop. You're right. Unless you're selling, obviously you're not losing anything, but it's the perception and the confidence in the market. And I think buyer confidence is the biggest thing. Whether if the economy is doing terrible, but people are confident that it's going to get better, then it's going to get better. And if they're confident or they're shaky on confidence, then that's going to be true as well. And so I think it plays into the mindset of the average person. And I think that's kind of the biggest effect I think that it has.
And I think it probably even affects the home sales, not so much in the class home that we're doing, but definitely the ones that you guys are building when you guys are building homes. I mean, if you got somebody that just lost a bunch of money in the stock market, their income hasn't changed, they're going to be less likely, especially combined with these higher interest rates, they're going to be less likely to sell where they're at now to move into that more expensive house.
No, that's 100% right.
Cool. What about you guys? Are you guys changing up anything with the way, I know you guys build houses and you build multifamily. You're not building houses at all right now, right? So you've kind of pivoted completely with multifamily. Will you pivot back when the house market starts picking back up?
Yeah, we absolutely will. We're working on zoning and approval of multiple single family neighborhoods right now. And so we absolutely plan to. We were building houses in the 1.2 to 1.5 price point. And so what we found, about a year, 18 months ago, when rates spiked, obviously especially in that million plus price point, sales really slowed down. And so we pivoted with the neighborhood that we had just completed from a development perspective, and we ended up selling off those lots to some national builders. And so we were able to realize some pretty good profit from selling those lots, and it freed us up to kind of shift our attention to the multifamily. But I think the price point home that we're going to target is going to be totally different when we get back into it. We're going to be looking to target, I call it 400 to 800,000, which is a much more achievable target. At least in our market, 400,000 it's almost as cheap as you can build a house because of land cost. And it sounds crazy to say, but that's a starter home, yeah. And so when we do get back to building, we'll be building at a different price point. And I think you're always going to see strong demand in that. We kind of got up in the middle part of the pyramid, and my dad always says his philosophy has been you want to be at the bottom of the buying pyramid because that's where most of the buyers are. And so when we get back to building single family, we're going to play close to the bottom, where it's a little easier to pivot. If the economy turns, it's easier to rent cheaper houses than it is to rent expensive houses when you talk about having different exit strategies. And so I think that's the biggest change we're making is kind of the price point of single family house that we're planning on building.
Yeah, we're still building a lot of houses right now, but they're almost all. And we'd sell any of them to an owner occupant. It's just owner occupants are buying them right now, and so most of what we're building right now is getting leased up and then either held or we're selling them as occupied kind of rental properties. There still seems to be a decent demand for investors for those and a huge need for the renters. So I think we're just going to keep really like pushing on those build to rents and then again once we see the market pick back up on say starter homes, we'll build more of those. And our market's a lot lower here because the land costs are cheaper at least than where you're at. So we'll probably build that $300,000 to $500,000 price point once it starts to pick back up. But I'm in no rush. We finished 2 spec homes and we will not start anymore until those are sold or rented out. But we're so for every 1 or 2 of those we do, we're going to build 10 or 20 of the lower grade build to rents. And again, we'd sell them to owner occupants. There are a lot more infill lots, and there could be a demand for owner occupants. I'm just not seeing it. We've tried listing some of them. Like I know even last year we tried listing some of them for sale before we listed them for rent. They just sat, and then we'd list them for rent, and they would rent almost immediately. And it's just that back to what we were talking about earlier. That the renters could all afford to buy, and their payment would be same, maybe a little bit more expensive, but they prefer a little bit cheaper, and they prefer to just rent, not have to deal with it, even if they're going to be long term tenants. So it's interesting.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It's a shift for sure.
Cool. Anything else that you guys are looking at in the future, or as things are shifting? Is there anything that you're kind of crystal ball? Anything that you're going to be? I know you're buying land right now to possibly, when it picks back up, start building houses. But anything else?
I think the biggest one of the single family developments that we have through the planning stages is going to have an alternative sewer system. And I think that's another big thing that we're seeing, especially in our market, and I think in a lot of markets that have experienced rapid growth over the last couple of years, is stress on sewer and stress on water from an infrastructure standpoint. And so we're going to try our hand at an alternative system for an entire neighborhood. And I think looking at other options in places that have those stresses is an opportunity that we're looking at. But I think just being creative, I think we're going to continue to see choppy up and down, and I think there's going to be opportunities, but it's going to be whether we're flexible, nimble, what you can jump to, and so I think there's going to be opportunities to add no matter what the market is over the next 12 to 18 months.
Well, like I said, for us, I think we're really just trying to anticipate what the need's going to be, but not getting in a rush and trying to force it. So again, we want to be in the best place possible so that when people are ready to start buying homes to live in, we're ready to start building them as quickly as possible, but not getting too far ahead of ourselves. Just not knowing it. Again, I think it's like it's going to be pretty rate driven when the rates start coming down, or if they start coming down, people are going to start buying houses again. But I have no idea if it's going to be 6 months from now or 2 years from now. So it's just kind of being as ready as possible when that time comes to start putting houses out there. And in the meantime, just trying to chug along until that happens. Cool. I don't think I have anything else. You got anything else you want to share?
No, I would just say I think you're putting yourself in a great position. I think by having rentals that you're comfortable with selling, you're making a cash flow now, and when that market does turn, you've built them at today's cost or yesterday's cost. And as we've seen, nothing ever gets cheaper. And so by continuing to build through the down times, you're putting yourself in a great position for when the market turns, because that's when the demand is going to be there. And we're already seeing a shift countrywide from oversupplied coming out of COVID to an undersupply. And so anybody who's got product on the ground or product close to being ready when the market turns the other direction is going to really be in the driver's seat. And so I think you're setting yourself up for a ton of success that way.
Well, I think housing as a whole, right? And I think most people agree that there's an undersupply. There's not enough homes being built to keep up with the demand. But the demand's really stalled out right now, so people aren't building homes. So it's just like going to keep getting worse until that starts to ramp back up. So it's just like, and that's what we look is like, how can we kind of just keep chugging along until it picks back up? So at least we're ready to go. But it'll be interesting to see when it's time. So I do think we are, and I think especially like where you're at, where we're at in Central Arkansas, I think we're undersupplied as a whole throughout the country. But I think some of these states where people are moving to, whether it's for affordability or just to get away from certain types of politics or whatever, I think there's a lot more people moving, at least to Central Arkansas, than people realize. And again, they're taking up the rental demand, but at some point it's going to be time they're going to buy houses and or just upgrade the rentals. Like maybe they're living in an apartment at some point they're not going to be ready to buy, but they're going to move into a rental house instead. Something still nice. And so maybe be curious to see how it goes. Yeah, cool. I really appreciate it. I think that was a good conversation today. It's interesting I feel like I was telling somebody again the other day. It's like when I was younger, I never took an economics class. I didn't want to learn anything. In school, I wasn't even remotely interested in this stuff. And now it's like half my time I spend listening to podcasts. It's like economics and what's going on in the market, and a lot of it's just trying to get ahead of these shifts and be ready for them when they happen.
No, 100%. Yeah, and the joke about economist is it's the only job where you can be 100% wrong 100% of the time and stay employed, So, it's just being ready and being comfortable with whatever comes, and it may get worse, it may get better, but just being in the best position you put yourself in.
Awesome. Cool, man. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. Again, everybody, if you guys liked it, comment. If you have any questions, ask questions in the comment section. We'll try to get to the questions at some point. And again, if you could leave us, a review or share, we'd really appreciate it.